Earlier, Topuria posted, I'm dealing with some personal problems, so I'm not gonna fight the first quarter. So the winner of Gaethje versus Paddy will be the interim title.
Okay, so picture this. For the very first time in UFC history, we've got an unbeaten two-division champion who might actually lose his belt without ever tasting defeat in the octagon. Dana White just made it official. Gaethje versus Pimblett drops January 24th. And here's the kicker. If Topuria doesn't show up, whoever wins becomes the undisputed champion. So what's making Topuria walk away from everything he's built? The truth behind this whole mess is going to blow your mind.
So over the past several weeks, I've made the difficult decision to temporarily step away from defending my title. This was not a decision I took lightly. However, when circumstances arise that threaten your personal integrity, your family, and your reputation, there comes a point when you must address them directly.
This is honestly one of the most shocking, unexpected, and frankly heartbreaking situations the UFC has ever seen unfold. What began as quiet whispers floating around social media back in October 2025 has transformed into a complete disaster that could completely destroy the career of one of the most gifted, explosive, and promising fighters to ever grace the octagon. We're talking about Ilia Topuria here, and his story is absolutely wild.
In recent months, I have been subjected to severe and unacceptable pressure, including threats to disseminate false allegations of domestic abuse unless financial demands were met. These allegations are entirely unfounded. The truth is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of evidence. All relevant evidence has been carefully preserved and documented, including audio recordings, written communications, witness statements, and video material.
Let me break down just who this guy is for anyone who hasn't been following his incredible journey. Ilia Topuria was born October 23rd, 1997, and stepped into the UFC back in 2020 as this relatively unknown fighter with a perfect record and this hunger that you could literally feel through the screen. What happened next was absolutely insane.
So that's heavy-duty stuff. Obviously, we knew that he was going through some personal issues, and there's rumors online, and I didn't want to partake in any of those. I had not heard any of this. I had not heard any of these allegations or rumors, innuendo, any of that. And so you can understand even more so why he would want to step away and not focus on fighting or defending his title, because obviously there's a lot going on.
This man tore through the featherweight division like a wrecking ball. He picked up massive wins over guys like Ryan Hall, Jay Herbert, Bryce Mitchell, Josh Emmett, and then delivered what might be the most star-making performance we've seen in years. February 2024 rolls around, and he absolutely starches Alexander Volkanovski with a knockout to capture the UFC Featherweight Championship. But get this, one belt wasn't enough for Topuria.
This evidence has been submitted to appropriate judicial authorities in order to pursue legal action for attempted extortion, falsification of evidence, misappropriation of funds, and personal property, and multiple threats. My initial decision to remain silent was made solely to protect my children, who are the most important part of my life. However, I've come to understand that silence under these circumstances does not protect the truth. It allows false narratives to take hold.
After successfully defending his featherweight crown against the legendary Max Holloway in October 2024, Topuria shocked everyone with his next move. February 19th, 2025, Dana White officially announces that Topuria is giving up the featherweight title to chase lightweight gold. This wasn't the UFC taking his belt away. This was Topuria willingly giving it up because he had bigger plans in mind.
I think a lot of people were surprised that you were not fighting in the first quarter, at least. But how is it with the UFC? Are they understanding? Because obviously all the fighters can go through problems such as what you are going through. How understanding was Hunter and the other people involved? The truth is, Ilia says they have been excellent. We have a special connection. I have understanding without having to give a lot of explanation, understanding from them. From the very first moment, they have extended their hand. I have been offered their support in any time I needed it.
Now, here's where things get absolutely crazy. Islam Makhachev, who had been completely dominating as lightweight champion, decides to vacate his title in May 2025 to chase welterweight glory. This opened up exactly the opportunity Topuria had been waiting for. June 28, 2025, UFC 317, Ilia Topuria captures the lightweight championship in the most brutal fashion imaginable.
The story is that this made headlines for something that we were already told a couple of weeks ago, and
there is no escalation from that, meaning Ilia Topuria is not vanquishing or having stripped from him the title.
The fight lasted exactly 51 seconds into round 1. Topuria used his explosive striking to land this devastating right hook that dropped Charles Oliveira cold, then followed up with ground and pound that put the Brazilian completely out. Herb Dean jumped in to stop it. And boom! Ilia Topuria had joined that exclusive club of 2 division champions. Just think about that destruction, knockouts over Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira. Guys like Matt Brown started comparing Topuria's run to John Jones's legacy, calling it potentially the greatest 3-fight stretch in MMA history.
The UFC doesn't exactly have the greatest track record of giving a shit if you hit a woman or not. John Jones, heavyweight champion of the world, arrested for beating his fiance. Arrested for it. Not accused of, arrested for it. And he remained the champion until he retired.
By August 2025, Topuria had reached the summit, #1 in the UFC pound-for-pound rankings. This man was literally on top of the world, 17-0, lightweight champion, and the entire MMA world was bowing down. Then everything went sideways.
With Ilia, he carries himself like a champion. You know, he's done it. You know, he's done a good job marketing himself. He hasn't been trash like, you know, in terms of some other people that we've seen across, you know, over the last couple of years. He's done a good job. So I'm not going to sit here and just throw heat at him and throw shade at him. I think he's got a good chance of proving, if he seems convinced he can prove her wrong or prove the allegations to be incorrect, then good for him.
Things started getting weird around October 6th and 7th, 2025. Fans noticed something strange. Topuria and his wife Georgina Bedell had wiped all photos of each other from their Instagram accounts. In today's social media world, that kind of thing spreads like wildfire. Fans immediately started wondering what was going down in the champion's personal life. The memes started flying. People were cracking jokes, but underneath all that internet noise, something much darker was building.
And then he'll get back on track, and it's not going to be easy though. Like, people think like, oh, it's going to be done, it's going to swipe it underneath the rug. But the problem is, though, is that there's time away from training. Not just that, the mental game. He's not what he will be when he comes back, what he was when he left. Will he come back being the same guy? Probably not. It's going to take him time to get his mental back on track.
November 2025 hits, and the rumors absolutely exploded. No more speculation. Now we're getting reported details. November 10th, Spanish media outlets dropped the bomb that Bedell had filed for divorce and was going after 50% of Topuria's assets. The whole situation was getting messier, more public, and more concerning for anyone who actually cared about Topuria's future. Then came the announcement that absolutely rocked the entire MMA world.
So, obviously you just saw Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim title. Earlier, Topuria posted, I'm dealing with some personal problems, so I'm not gonna fight the first quarter. So the winner of Gaethje versus Paddy will be the interim title, and then they will face Topuria.
December 15th, 2025. Topuria releases this statement that revealed something nobody saw coming. The lightweight champion wasn't just dealing with a messy divorce. According to Topuria himself, he was facing something way more serious, an alleged extortion plot targeting him and his family.
You do wonder, at some point, will they decide to make that interim belt the actual belt if he's not going to come back anytime soon? I think I don't think that they're going to be forced to do that for the January event. We'll see what kind of timeline he's on, how long this is going to play out. But if it's by next summer, perhaps they make that call.
So, look, I need to be crystal clear about something here. These are allegations we're talking about. These are claims coming from Ilia Topuria's side. We don't have all the facts. We don't know what evidence exists. Either way, what we absolutely know is that the reigning UFC lightweight champion has decided to step away from fighting indefinitely to handle this situation. Like Ariel Helwani perfectly explained when he broke this story down.
The #1 contender for his belt, Arman Tsarukyan, ends up not getting a shot at the belt, has to go out and do another fight, which officially gets named the #1 contenders fight, of which Tsarukyan wins, but he is not fighting for the belt. Paddy the Baddy versus Justin Gaethje are going to go ahead and fight.
The guy who was supposed to represent the UFC's future, the fighter who had achieved things most people only fantasize about, was now walking away from the sport right at the absolute peak of his powers. Everyone's asking the same question: what happens now to the lightweight division, these extortion claims, and all the fallout that's coming?
If we have the ability to get the belt off of Ilya without giving him a scratch, right? I mean, behind the scenes, you're giving him a bump anyway. Behind the scenes, you pulled him down in the rankings and put Islam, a guy who refused to fight him. You put a guy who refused to fight Ilya over Ilya. So you want a pound of flesh. It's very clear that you do. Just take the whole damn thing. Don't take a little version of his belt back. Take the entire belt back.
To really grasp how serious these allegations from Ilia Topuria are, we need to dig into the details of his December 15th statement and look at how people have reacted, because this situation has split the MMA community like few stories ever have.
Ilia Topuria's fighting career, it's done. And it's a shame to see it end this way. Everything going on right now outside of his fighting career, personal life, that's big things going on in this man's life. Why would he need to come back? He has all the money in the world, double champion, undefeated.
But what a career he's had if it is done. I mean, just knocked out Charles Oliveira and went up to 155. Finished Max Holloway. Finished Alexander Volkanovski. And what a rise he came on since fighting Bryce Mitchell back in 2021. I mean, what he has done and how he's ultimately changed the sport. But the weird thing about it is this not parallel to Conor McGregor?
Let's unpack this whole mess, because there's a ton going on here. Topuria and Georgina Badell got married back in 2020 and have 2 little kids together, a daughter born in 2021 and a son in 2023. We're not just talking about some celebrity breakup here. This is a family being ripped apart, with small children stuck in the middle of what looks like an incredibly nasty separation.
Wants to know, you announced not the first quarter that you'll fight in January. When would you like to fight? When you feel it's time to return? Well, Ilya says, as I've communicated, I'm going through some personal problems. I do not have an exact date when everything will be fixed. I hope that as soon as possible, as soon as it is solved, I will be ready to go back. In the octagon, I prioritize at this time the welfare of my family, of my children, my own. So as soon as everything is solved, I will be back to the octagon to give it the show that everyone deserves.
Multiple reports and social media buzz connect the alleged extortion scheme to Topuria's ongoing divorce battle with Badell. While Topuria doesn't specifically name anyone in his public statement, the timing and circumstances make it pretty obvious who he's talking about. The accusations he's throwing around are no joke. Attempted extortion, faking evidence, stealing money, these aren't small-time allegations.
Just a very unfortunate situation for someone who, was on this meteoric rise, and will hopefully for him, if everything works out in his favor, be able to continue that rise. But obviously this is a huge obstacle on a personal level that he's going to have to overcome, and wish everyone involved the best, and hopefully it can be resolved.
But here's where everything gets messy. Not everyone in the MMA world is ready to back Topuria on this. The loudest voice calling him out? That's UFC featherweight Bryce Mitchell. December 15th, 2025. Right after Topuria's statement drops, Mitchell posts this brutal Instagram video, straight up accusing Topuria of domestic violence, calling him a wife beater, and completely dismissing the extortion claims. Mitchell, who's known for never holding back on his conservative opinions, went absolutely nuclear on this situation. Mitchell straight up said that anyone who puts hands on a woman is a piece of garbage, called out Topuria's brother too, and started bringing religion into it, telling Topuria he needs to repent and return to Jesus Christ, or he's going to hell, where woman beaters belong. Here's the thing though. Mitchell is making these massive accusations without any evidence, without any charges being filed, without any court proceedings determining guilt. He's just assuming the allegations against Topuria are true. This shows one of the most messed up parts of situations like this. Public opinion often decides guilt long before any actual court gets to examine the evidence. Andrew Tate also jumped into the situation, with his general relationship commentary getting tied to the Topuria divorce by media outlets. When MMA drama meets internet personalities, you get this perfect storm of speculation and hot takes flying everywhere. But through all this chaos, some people have shown genuine support for Topuria during this nightmare. Sean O'Malley, in early December 2025, showed real empathy, saying he doesn't blame Topuria at all for stepping back. If you're dealing with divorce and relationship drama, you have to handle that personal stuff before jumping into fight camp. Your mind needs to be ready, focused, and sharp. It's definitely not the time to be preparing for fights. The UFC itself? According to Topuria, they've been completely supportive of his situation. This matters because people have been wondering if the UFC would just strip Topuria of his title and move forward. After all, they're running a business that depends on promoting fights, and a champion who can't compete creates problems for the entire division. But at least right now, it looks like Dana White and the UFC leadership are willing to give Topuria the time he needs to work through his personal crisis. However, not everyone thinks that's the right approach. Chael Sonnen, the veteran analyst and former UFC fighter, has been really vocal about what he thinks the UFC needs to do. Sonnen has also argued that this situation requires immediate action. December 16, 2025. Sonnen argued on his podcast that the UFC has to strip Topuria, saying fighters aren't eligible to hold titles while dealing with non-injury or non-illness issues. He explained that the moment Topuria told everyone he was missing fights for anything outside of injury or illness criteria, that's automatic grounds for stripping the championship. Then there's the precedent question, because the UFC has handled domestic violence allegations before, and their track record is pretty complicated. This is an uncomfortable reality the MMA community has to face. Jon Jones got arrested for domestic violence and stayed champion. Stefan Struve was signed after being found guilty and convicted of domestic violence. The UFC has historically stayed hands-off when it comes to what their independent contractors do in their personal lives. But no matter what happens with the legal stuff, there's one reality Topuria has to confront. Time away from fighting takes its toll. This is the harsh truth of professional fighting. It's not just about physical preparation, it's about mental sharpness, focus, having your entire life organized so you can step into that cage and perform at the highest level. Right now, Ilia Topuria is dealing with the kind of personal chaos that would derail anyone. So here we are today. The UFC lightweight champion is sidelined indefinitely. The division is stuck in limbo, and Dana White has a major problem that needs fixing. Enter UFC 304 and the fight that could change everything. November 27th, 2025, during a surprise Thanksgiving announcement during the NFL game between Kansas City Chiefs and Dallas Cowboys. Dana White made an announcement that set the MMA world on fire. Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim UFC lightweight championship. Set for January 24th, 2026 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This fight headlines UFC 304 and marks the promotion's debut on Paramount+. On the surface, this looks pretty straightforward. Create an interim title while the champion handles his personal issues, then have the winner fight Topuria for unification later. Easy enough, right? But here's where things get really interesting and potentially super complicated. Paddy Pimblett has publicly suggested Topuria might need to give up the title if he's absent until summer 2026 to keep the division moving, and he's not the only one thinking that way. Sources are saying Topuria is actually considering vacating the lightweight title, which would align with UFC precedents, where champions like Conor McGregor got stripped for extended inactivity. Think about this. Conor McGregor lost his featherweight title in November 2016 after 11 months of inactivity, then lost his lightweight title in April 2018 after almost 18 months without a defense. Topuria's current 6-month absence since his June 2025 win isn't at stripping levels yet, but if this drags into spring or summer 2026, we could be looking at 12 to 14 months of inactivity. Ariel Helwani asked the question everyone's thinking about. So what happens if Gaethje versus Pimblett gets upgraded from an interim title fight to an undisputed championship fight? Let's examine what's on the line for both fighters. Justin Gaethje, now 37 years old with a record of 26-5, has openly said this fight represents his final shot at capturing undisputed UFC gold. In interviews on December 15th and 16th, 2025, he stated he'd be crazy to think this is the start of his career. This is his last opportunity, and the chance to end his career the way he wants is everything he could ask for. This isn't just another fight for Gaethje. This is legacy. This is everything he's worked toward over a decade-plus career in mixed martial arts. This man has saved UFC events multiple times. won 3 of his last 4 fights, and wants to go out on his own terms with championship gold. On the other side, Pimblett at 23-3 overall and a perfect 7-0 in the UFC has confidently predicted a knockout victory. Everyone's going to be shocked because I think I'm going to finish him. People won't see that coming. I don't think he makes it past the 3rd round. Pimblett has mentally claimed the belt as the real championship, especially with all the Topuria rumors floating around. When I win the belt, I'm the champion now. I'm still going to be a world champion once I beat Gaethje and lift that interim belt. The confidence from Pimblett is undeniable, and if Topuria's situation keeps getting worse, if the legal battles stretch on, if the timeline becomes indefinite, then Pimblett might be absolutely right. He could become the undisputed champion without ever having to face Ilia Topuria. But let's not ignore the other fighter who's been waiting patiently for his shot. Arman Tsarukyan has volunteered as the official backup for UFC 34, planning to be in Las Vegas and ready to step in on short notice. The #1 contender, who has done everything asked of him, finds himself watching from the sidelines while Gaethje and Pimblett fight for the title. The lightweight division is complete chaos right now, and Chael Sonnen doesn't hold back about what he thinks needs to happen. Those are strong words from Sonnen, reflecting a growing feeling in the MMA community. The logic is simple. You can't hold an entire division hostage forever. Other fighters have careers, families, and deserve their opportunities. While everyone feels for what Topuria is going through, at some point the show has to continue. Now I want to wrap this up with some perspective, because there are people who think Ilia Topuria's fighting career might already be finished. That comparison keeps coming up. Conor McGregor, another 2-division champion who stepped away from the sport amid personal controversies and legal troubles, another generational talent whose career got derailed by circumstances outside the octagon. The similarities are impossible to ignore, but Topuria isn't gone yet. He confirmed to ESPN Deportes that he hopes to return as soon as possible, prioritizing his family's welfare while expressing hope that he'll be ready to return to the octagon once everything gets resolved. There's still a chance, however small, that Topuria can clear his name, resolve his legal issues, and return to defend his championship. So we wait. We wait to see what happens with the legal proceedings. We wait to see if the UFC decides to strip to Topuria or let him keep his title. We wait to see who wins between Gaethje and Pimblett on January, and we wait to see if Ilia Topuria, one of the most talented fighters we've ever seen, will ever step inside the octagon again. UFC 34 is being promoted as a blockbuster championship doubleheader, featuring not just the lightweight interim title fight, but also Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes for the women's bantamweight championship. It's going to be an incredible night of fights, but Ilia Topuria's absence will cast a shadow over everything. Because here's what nobody wants to admit out loud. If Topuria doesn't come back, we're watching the end of what could have been one of the greatest careers in UFC history. 17 wins, 0 losses, 13 finishes, knockouts over 3 of the best fighters on the planet. All of it potentially destroyed, not by an opponent inside the cage, but by the chaos of life outside it. As Ariel Helwani put it perfectly, the lightweight division won't wait forever. UFC 324 is approaching fast. Gaethje and Pimblett are ready to battle for gold. The question that remains is simple. Will Ilia Topuria ever return to reclaim what belongs to him? Only time will give us that answer. Click on one of the cards on your screen to watch more videos like this.